Hello and welcome to another Mr. Carter Science Special. In this video, we'll be looking at competition in animals. So, in previous videos, we've discussed natural selection, where the best adapted individuals are more likely to survive and breed and pass on their genes or alleles to the next generation. And we've also discussed the fact that there is an overpopulation in all species. More individuals are born than will survive to adulthood. So therefore all living things will compete for resources in their habitat. And this competition drives natural selection and evolution. Now there is competition between members of different species, known as interspecific competition, and competition between members of the same species, known as intraspecific competition. So an example of interspecific competition would be the lions and hyenas competing here for the same food source. And intraspecific competition, here we've got two male rams competing over territory and mates, a male within the same species. So in general, animals will compete for food, for territory, or for mates. And we're going to run through this list and have a look at each one in more detail. Now, if we're competing for food as animals, we have to consider, are we talking about herbivores or carnivores, because their competition is slightly different. So herbivores will have two strategies for competition when it comes to food. Herbivores will either generalize and feed on many types of plants, or they can specialize and feed on only one or two species of plants. If you generalize, you can avoid competition by changing your diet. And if you specialize, you can adapt to eat plants which are less popular, and so there's less competition. However, specialists do run the risk of going extinct if something happens to their food source. For example, giant pandas avoid interspecific competition by specializing to eat only one species of bamboo plant. However, habitat destruction is threatening their only food source, and so putting the giant panda at risk of extinction. When it comes to carnivores, the story is slightly different. Carnivores will compete for prey. The individuals best adapted at catching prey will be the most successful. And carnivores often have to compete against each other and other species. For example, the lions and hyenas competing to eat a carcass, a dead animal. This is an example of interspecific competition. Carnivores also have to compete for prey against members of their own species. And this is an example of intraspecific competition. Successful carnivore adaptations include longer legs for running, bigger muscles, sharper eyes to spot prey, sharp claws, beaks, teeth, all for grabbing and killing the prey. And the alleles for these successful adaptations can be passed on to the offspring. But we also have to consider the prey themselves. Prey items also compete with each other to avoid being caught and eaten. Successful adaptations include camouflage or sharp eyesight, being able to run faster or have longer legs. But some prey items even contain poison and have warning signs to warn off potential predators, like this poison dart frog from the South American rainforest. Very bright, very easy to spot, but its bright coloration acts as a warning to say, hey, I've got a lot of poison in me. If you try and eat me, you are likely to die. It's an absolutely fantastic adaptation to prevent the frog from being eaten. Now, one of the major cause for concern in recent years has been introduced species, because introduced species are often more successfully adapted to finding food than the native species, and this can have devastating consequences for the native species. One of the most famous examples of this is the rabbits, which were introduced into Australia, which outcompeted almost all the native species and destroyed the natural vegetation and reduced the amount of plant life that was available for native species to be able to eat. The population size of the native species therefore decreased. Currently, and you may have seen TV programs about this, Burmese pythons, which were introduced into the Florida Everglades, are outcompeting native species. The Burmese python is incredibly well adapted to these conditions, but it's not native to Florida. And they are growing and reproducing at a huge rate and having a huge impact on the native populations, which are declining in their population size. And we also have the American grey squirrel here, which was introduced into the UK over 150 years ago and has been outcompeting the native red squirrel, which used to be found across the whole of the UK, but is now only found in a small number of places in North Wales, the northwest of England, and a few small places in Scotland, because the grey squirrel is better adapted to finding food. In fact, it is able to eat a greater variety of food as well. So when food sources are scarce, the red squirrel tends to suffer and its population sizes are declining. The second thing that animals compete for is territory. Many animal species will set up and defend a territory, and this will allow individuals to find food and mates. And most animals cannot reproduce successfully without a territory. So there's competition for the best spaces which contain enough food for the animal, for the mates, and for the young that are produced. Territory is often marked with urine or feces. In the UK, for example, roe deer will compete to control territory and the females that are contained within there. Elephant seals also do the same thing elsewhere in the world. The final thing that animals compete for are mates. Many animal species will compete for the right to mate. Males will often fight for the right to mate with several females, and males often have successful adaptations like horns to help them be successful in this competition to mate. For example, the male ibex is here having long horns to help them compete with females. Female choice, though, has also led to the evolution of many special adaptations in males. Females can choose which males to mate with and will try and mate with the males that seem best adapted to living in that environment because they want those genes to be passed on to their children. So in many species, males have special adaptations designed to impress females and attract a mate. For example, male peacocks or male birds of paradise or male lizards often display more bright colours in an effort to try and attract the slightly duller female. So here you can see the male bird of paradise trying to attract the less flamboyant female bird of paradise. Successful competitors will be better adapted than its rivals within a species and with other species. A successful competitor will be better at finding food and territory and mates so that it can breed successfully. Some species and individuals will be successful by avoiding competition, and they will feed or eat in a unique way. For example, many insects can feed on one plant without competing. Caterpillars can eat the leaves, greenfly can drink the sap, and butterflies can drink the nectar from the flowers, and beetles can even eat the pollen, all on the same plant without competing for each other. So successful competitors will either be the best adapted or they'll be the individuals which have the best strategy for avoiding competition. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. As always, like and subscribe and drop me a comment below to let me know what you've enjoyed. I'll also put some links in the comments to some excellent videos showing you the different competitions in different species and examples of that.